Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our latest HubSpot training webinar. Today, we're going to run through how to efficiently segment your contact database using HubSpot. For those of you who haven't joined our webinars before, my name is Matt Creswick, and I am the Group Head of Marketing at the B2B Marketing Lab. And yeah, I've been with the company for about 5 years, working with the HubSpot tool for all of that time. And as you know, sort of the B2B Marketing Lab are a Diamond HubSpot partner within London, and we've been running actually HubSpot classroom training sessions within our offices for those 5 years as well. So let's crack on to today's topic, which is contact segmentation within the tool. So I guess just to set the scene, just a quick explanation of exactly what segmentation is when we talk about segmenting contacts. So obviously within your marketing efforts, you want to be focused on delivering the right message to the right contact at the right time. Context is key in this scenario. You're collating a lot of data points and a lot of information around your contacts and your leads as they come through your HubSpot system. So the key really there is being able to understand what information you have on somebody to be able to provide the best message and the right content to them. Your company has probably more competitors than it ever has done before. It's never been easier to create a company and start a company. So you have to try your best to, one, stand out, but secondly, create a really good message and deliver that message to the right person at the right time. If you're promoting content to people and content and email content and ebooks and stuff like that, and delivering it to people that isn't going to interest them or isn't relevant to them, you'll soon sort of turn those people away. So with that comes knowing who your most important audiences are. How would you describe a really good lead compared to a lead who wasn't so good? Where to find them, where they spend their time. Are they on social media platforms? Are they on things like LinkedIn or Instagram? Do they spend their time reading specific publications? Or do they simply spend their time, on the internet, Google searching? Not only that, but which messages best resonate with them is important. So what are the key things? You might be trying to target one specific company, and your message that you would want to send to perhaps the CEO of that company compared to a marketing exec or a HR person within that company are two very different messages. So understanding who your target audience is and the exact message that you want to send to them is a challenge in itself. But once you sort of have that information, and once you can segment your database, you can much more efficiently send those messages to the right people at the right time. And all of this, we talk about segmentation and being able to segment your contacts, but this is a really big focus for your whole content plan. So you should, rather than sort of building a whole content plan and then getting to the end of it and thinking, right, okay, how are we now going to segment our database? We should be thinking about that right at the start, so that we can make sure that when we write content and when we create content, we're creating content for all of our segments, be it persona, be it industry, just to make sure that we're covering all bases. So why segment your database? It's important for your marketing team, but it's also important for your sales team. With those two areas of the business becoming more blurred than ever before, it's important to understand for marketing and sales to both understand where your segments are and also agree on those definitions. Firstly, it allows you to do much more targeted e-shots. So with a segmented database, you can really tailor your emails to send to the right audience. For example, if you have a piece of content that targets multiple buyer personas, you can split your emails out and create different emails. Even though you might be sending the same piece of content, the same blog, the same ebook, you can send and you can you can split your emails out so that you can send perhaps 4 different emails, one to each persona, and that message in that email is much more specific to the person that it's going to. You can also send different teams the right product specific inquiries. So say you have a product, and if you think about account-based marketing, you might be targeting, like I mentioned earlier, a CEO, perhaps someone in HR, someone in marketing, someone in sales, someone in operations. Those messages are all going to be different. And if those guys are all looking at a specific product, the way that they use the product and their interest in your product or service is going to be different. So knowing who that person is, having information on that person, and then tailoring that message to that specific person is key when it comes to segmentation. It allows you to qualify your leads. Simply getting a new lead and being able to segment between whether or not this would be a qualified lead or an unqualified lead. It helps keep your database clean. It helps keep your messages, a high quality. It helps your email sends. It helps the conversion rates for your email sends to be really high. And it also allows you to create tailored workflows for each persona. So you can build workflows based on persona, which means that you know that all of the content that person receives is going to be relevant to them, is going to resonate with them within that email send. So there's a few different ways that you can segment data within the HubSpot software. Just to give you a few examples here, obviously I've mentioned previously you can do this firstly by persona. So you can easily create a list. HubSpot has a property for your persona, so you can easily create a list of buyer personas. How many of your contacts meet this buyer persona, and you perhaps want to send an email to them or use smart content to provide a specific message to them. You can also use lifecycle stage. So lifecycle stage is a great way to segment your database. As we've gone through a few previous webinars before, being able to send a specific message to someone at a specific stage in the buyer's journey is key. The message that you want to send a lead or perhaps a marketing qualified lead is very different to the message that you would want to send an opportunity who's very nearly ready to close. So tailoring those email sends and that content based on life cycle stage is key there. Lead acquisition. So for example, on smart content, you can use smart content on your landing pages, on your website pages so when that person lands on your website, the message they get perhaps on your homepage could be different based on where they've come from. If the person comes from organic search or comes from PPC or comes from social media, you might want to tailor that message ever so slightly. And last of all, you can also segment your contact database based on HubSpot owner. So HubSpot owner can either be perhaps it's still owned by marketing or it's still owned by sales. And also within that sales environment, you can segment based on who the actual individual contact owner is. First of all, to be able to make sure that every email you send, even if it's a sales or a marketing email, comes from the contact owner, so that the salesperson is starting to build a relationship with that prospect and starting to recognize their name. So in terms of actually I guess everything up until this point, as ever with the stuff the strategy and the planning behind everything that happens with the HubSpot tool, there's a lot of thinking to be done before you actually jump into the tool itself. However, once you're actually in the tool, you know how you want to segment your data. You might have decided it's going to be persona driven. You might be decided it's going to be life cycle stage. You might be thinking about things like industry. It might be all of the above, because the more information you have on people and the more different ways that you can segment that audience, the better you can deliver that message. But once we get actually into the HubSpot tool, and we'll actually dive into some demo examples in a few minutes' time. But just to cover a couple of ways that you can actually start to segment your data so that the information's in the right place. First example is self-selection. And what this means is you asking your leads to essentially self-select which potential segment they might fall into. By getting your prospects to tell you a little bit more about themselves, you just need to basically ask the right questions at the right time. So you can use things like custom forms on fields, which means that you ask questions to find out more about your prospects and get them to select the answer that resonates with them the most. A good example of this is simply asking them, a form field which asks them to describe perhaps which persona they fall into or which job function they have, or things like, you could ask a prospect what their biggest challenge is. and provide perhaps 3 or 4 different answers based on the personas that you have, or if one of your personas is very commonly seeing this challenge, you can make a good judgment there that that person will fall into that persona bucket. This works quite well with job title or job function, because there's so many different job titles. If the amount of different ways that you could perhaps describe what would be a marketing manager, or even a CEO or founder, or anyone in the C-suite. There's so many different job titles, especially if we start thinking outside of the UK and across into the US. There's so many job titles that mean the same thing. So asking something like a job function really allows you to segment those contacts into job function, as opposed to trying to work through a list of 100 different ways you can describe the word marketing manager. Having this as a free text field doesn't lend itself to segmentation too well. So when you're building these self-select questions that you want to put on your forms, you want to make sure that somebody has to choose an option. Because further down the line, if you use free text and somebody can type whatever they want, that's a very hard thing to be able to create rules off and to create segmentation off. So self-selection is a great way. It's a very sort of non-touch way that you can just set up once and leave in your forms, and allow people to answer that question themselves. Another way is hidden fields. So hidden fields is something that you can basically implement on a HubSpot form. And what it means is that when the lead or prospect falls on your website and fills in a form, they don't see the question, they don't have to choose an answer. But it means that you can basically set something like a lifecycle stage, or a lead source, or a persona or something like that, that that if this person's filling in this form, that they are definitely interested in X, which means that they fall into persona Y. In a similar way that you can say, right, if this is a really top of the funnel, this might be quite a high value, top level ebook that doesn't involve that much interest. It's very educational. It's not product focused. It's not bottom of the funnel. You can use hidden fields to automatically assign that person to become, for example, a lead. On the flip side, you can do things like, if say it's a contact us form, a free demo, a free trial, something quite bottom of the funnel, you can use hidden fields to automatically set that person to perhaps be a marketing qualified lead, which your sales team would then treat differently to a normal lead. Third way you can do this in HubSpot is default HubSpot analytics. So there's a lot of information that HubSpot has within the software itself, which allows you to segment your data. For example, all the time HubSpot is collecting data on things like conversions, on things like page views, original source, and date stamps. You might be, I guess, a few examples here of the way that you can segment on this is, if somebody fills in a specific form, you want to send them X. If somebody perhaps comes back to your website and has a number of sessions or a number of page views within a 2-week period, that's quite a good perhaps buying sign and buying signal. So you might want to send them a very relevant email after that. Obviously, things like lead scoring and that sort of thing allow your sales teams to segment your data in terms of priority. So if your sales team are looking to reach out to leads and want to understand, right, who are the guys who have been on the website the most recently, who have shown the most activity, HubSpot has all that information, and you don't need to set that up. You can simply just go in and build lists based on those properties. Last of all, you can also do things like assign personas with workflow. So you can say, you can set the rules, and you can say, right, if somebody fills in this form, perhaps has viewed this page and is in X industry or has a job function of Y, set the persona to be this. All you're doing with this information is basically trying to build a big picture to allow you to then put contacts into specific pots, which then furthermore allows you to really send that right message at the right time. So let's just jump into the HubSpot tool just to show you a few examples of how you can better segment your contact database and also what you can use with that information. So first of all, obviously, as I mentioned, HubSpot has a lot of its own properties built within the software. So if I flick through this list here within our HubSpot portal, you can see the amount of properties which have HubSpot as the owner. And those are the ones that HubSpot automatically builds and you have as part of your HubSpot portal. Things like conversion date, create date, website views, website pages viewed, when they last came back to the site, loads and loads and loads of information. And then there's also a mix of ones that are that are called custom fields, and these are the ones that you can customly build yourself, which are very relevant to your business and very relevant to the information that you need. Now, in order to create a new custom field, a new custom property, we can click on create a property here, and then we can essentially ask the question that you want to ask. So for example, this one we can do, what industry are you in? You can have the option of doing a description, and then last of all, you choose which group you want to put it in. So this is a way that you can group your custom properties and your custom fields. And then last of all, you can choose how you want the person to answer the question. Now, as we said previously, we want to avoid building free text fields here on the basis that they're very hard to use in segmentation. So what we're going to do here is do a drop-down select, which means that, say, if we do healthcare, do IT, and we can do HR, for example, in terms of industries, what it means is that somebody will have to choose one of those pieces of information, and you can easily segment. You can easily build a list to say, show me all the contacts that picked healthcare, or show all the contacts that picked IT. Really easy to do, really sort of intuitive, really easy to set up. All you have to do is simply click create, and then from that point onwards, you can either use it on a form field, which means that somebody has to complete it themselves, or you can just use it as an internal field so that your marketing and sales team can update as and when they like to. Secondly, in order to be able to create hidden fields, so this is the example I gave around somebody filling in a form and a field being completed, but the lead doesn't actually see the field themselves. If you're creating a form like the one you can see here, we've got first name, last name, email address, company name, and website URL. But actually what I've decided I want to do is anyone who fills in this form, I want to set their lifecycle stage to be a lead. So all I have to do at this point is find the lifecycle stage property, as I've done here, drag it over and set here. Now, at the moment, what will happen is if I put this form live now, the prospect or the lead or the website visitor that's on your website would actually see this within the form, which obviously isn't great. You don't want them to literally decide what lifecycle stage they think they're at. But what you can do is if you click on that field, you see the options come up on the left-hand side. And you can pre-select, so I can, for example, hit lead. So I want anyone who fills in this form to automatically become a lead. And then you can do make this field hidden, which means that it doesn't show up on the form and it only works in the background. And that's a really good way of setting your, of making sure that without building lots of workflows, you can just automatically assign people to things like leads. The cool thing about HubSpot is that if it's a contact who's already filled in a form before, so say for example somebody had already filled in a form which automatically assigned them to become an MQL, what you don't want to happen is the person goes backwards. So you have MQLs assigning themselves to become leads. But HubSpot's quite intuitive in the way that it doesn't allow content, unless you reset it yourself, it doesn't allow contacts to move backwards through the lifecycle stages. So if they're an MQL and they fill in the form to become a lead, HubSpot will recognize that and say, okay, this person's already an MQL. They're already a little bit further down the funnel than that. So we'll leave them as an MQL. In order to try and ask people, so say for example, this person has filled in a form before, they're already an MQL, they're already a lead, sorry, they're already an MQL, we don't want this to become a lead, but what we actually want to do, because we already know their name, their email, their company name, and their website, we want to ask them a little bit more information. So it's at this point perhaps where we might want to start going down the more persona-led stuff, or you might even want to say what's their phone number, what's their job title, that sort of thing. So what you can do here is that when that person now comes back onto the website and goes to fill in a second form, rather than asking for the information that you already have again, you can set up things called progressive profiling. you can see here that the field I'm hovering over at the moment has a little green dot and a progressive field sign. What this means is this is already set up so that if the information is already known, it will bring in a different piece of information. And if you scroll down the page on the right-hand side, you'll see we've got queued progressive fields. If I open that, you can see that these are the queued progressive fields that will come in if the information above is already known. So for example, if I want to understand how many employees this company has, I can put that at the top of the list, and that will come in and that will be shown if the company name is already known. Last but not least, in terms of the HubSpot demo itself, you can obviously we speak a lot about personas and being able to segment on persona, and that is one of the key and one of the most used areas we see segmentation in HubSpot. A lot of our clients, and we help them to set up things like lead nurture pathways based on persona, just to make sure that that message is correct, that message is, you know, has the right context. In order to do this, obviously we need the information in HubSpot, so we need each and every contact, each and every lead to have a persona assigned to them. So what you can do is, using workflows as opposed to forms, you can assign personas to contacts based on specific pieces of information. So for example, one of our personas is a marketing manager who uses HubSpot. So for example, what I'm going to do at this point is look at the field, is this person an existing HubSpot user? And if they are, great, I'm going to use that as one of my starting criteria points. Second of all, I'm going to say, and the contact's job function, for example, let's see if we've got one that we can use, let's do is known. So all of our people in this list are existing HubSpot users, and we know what their jobs function is. So great, okay, I want to use that as my starting criteria. Now your starting criteria can be anything you want based on your personas. It can be job title, it can be industry, it can be any, have they filled in a form before, are they a certain seniority? That's the information that you need to work out before you start implementing this into HubSpot. But for example, today we'll do contacts a HubSpot user and the job function is known. So if I hit save, you can see that's my starting criteria. Now what I want to do is make sure that anyone who meets that criteria is set to a certain persona. So as I mentioned, HubSpot automatically has persona set up as a property within your portals. You might need to go in and actually, you know, call them the personas that you need to. But once you've done that, you can set your contact property of persona and choose which persona you want that person to be assigned to. So for example, today we're going to do marketing Rachel, who uses HubSpot, and hit save. At the moment this workflow is off, so you know, I'm just in sort of testing mode, so no one's going to actually change. But essentially, once you're happy with that, once you've got all the information you need, you can hit review here, and then the HubSpot takes you through the steps of putting that workflow live. As I said, there's a few different ways that you can segment your audience based on things like forms, things like workflows, all with the thinking and the ability to then tailor the messages that you send out. So, you know, the example I've given here of marketing Rachel, somebody who uses HubSpot and is a marketing manager. And what we would look to do now is, you know, when we're sending emails, we're going to send specific emails to this persona, as opposed to sending the same email across the board. In another way, we're using things like smart content. So smart content means that you can display different things on your website based on who's viewing. Again, we might set this up because we know that this person uses HubSpot and is working in marketing. We might put a different message on the homepage, a different CTA to a different ebook based on what we think Rachel will be interested in. I hope that makes sense in terms of the HubSpot demo side of things. I guess just in terms of the key takeaways, key things to remember is make sure that you use the drop down or radio select fields when segmenting. Try not to use free text fields because they'll be very hard to segment on at a later date. Before you do anything in HubSpot, decide on the key questions you need to ask your prospects. Is it what is their main challenge? Is it what job function they're in? Is it what industry they're in? What are the key things that you need to be able to know about someone to be able to really send them a really contextualized message? Where are the contact properties that should be hidden? So, the example of life cycle stage, what are the things that you want to set in and happen in the background without having to actually get your leads and prospects to answer themselves? Last but not least, set up a workflow to assign your contacts to a persona. So get HubSpot working in the background for you. If you set your criteria and you know in the back of your mind that if this person is in this job role and has filled in this form, is going to be set to that persona. Try where possible to take as much of the manual process of your sales team perhaps or your marketing team having to manually go in and set somebody to become a certain persona. Try and set it up in a way that it automatically happens in the background. To make you more efficient and to make HubSpot more efficient for you. Hope that all made sense. If you have any questions whatsoever, please, you can feel free to put them on the chat pane, or you can drop me an email after this webinar itself. As I mentioned at the start of the webinar, we have HubSpot training taking place in our offices on a monthly basis. We've got a couple of dates coming up in a couple of weeks' time in March, and same again at the end of April. So you can see my email address on the screen at the moment. If there's any questions, please do let me know. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this webinar, and we look forward to speaking with you again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.